Man Who Would Be Queen. Dr. J. Michael Bailey's seminal book, The Man Who Would Be Queen, sparked huge controversy when it was published in 2003. The furore it caused, whilst small in focus, was spectacular in its incandescent rage at the author. This was categorically different from the conservative reaction to works of other controversial authors like D.H. Lawrence, or even Vladimir Nabokov's deeply unsettling study of male attraction to pubescent girls. In those, the hostility was principally against the book. Not so here. It was J. Michael Bailey in person who was vilified. And to cap that, The Man Who Would Be Queen is not a work of fiction, but of popular science. It is well written, in non-scientific language, is easy to read and deeply sympathetic to its subject. So what on earth happened to provoke such a furious backlash? It included entirely spurious attempts to end Bailey's career, personal slurs and threats of violence against him. His attackers even accused him of sexually molesting his own children. The campaign against Bailey, coordinated by a small group of internet bullies, amounted to nothing more or less than a blatant attempt at censorship, associated with a virulent personal attack on the author. It's time now to revisit this book and see why it caused such a storm in a latte cup. The book begins with a general overview of the scientific understanding of male homosexuality, first by describing the life of a young, highly feminine, cross-dressing boy called Danny, not his real name. Danny began to show feminine behaviour and to cross-dress when he was 3. His mother came to Bailey for help. In Part 2, it progresses to describe femininity in adult male homosexuals, and contrasts this with masculinity in the same group. At the end of this section, Bailey briefly discusses the known history of male homosexuality. He introduces the idea of transgender homosexuality, on one hand, in which, although both partners are born male, one plays a woman in all manners, including appearance, comportment, and in sexual intercourse. On the other, there is egalitarian homosexuality, where both parties are masculine in appearance and comportment. The former is the norm across the world, and was the only model until the 20th century. The latter appeared in Western culture, specifically in the USA in the 1960s, and has been spread by contact since. Bailey makes the important point that in the former, only one partner is actually homosexual, since she is born male but desires masculine men, while her partner desires women, and plays a masculine sexual role. In the latter form, both men are homosexual because both desire men and appear to be men. Bailey makes the accurate assessment that transgender homosexuals, since they are attracted to straight men, who are therefore attracted to femininity, are naturally driven to appear to be as feminine as possible. On the other hand, egalitarian homosexuals, themselves attracted to masculinity, appear to be masculine themselves. This is sometimes called clone homosexuality. The author then poses questions about how Danny's life might proceed in view of all of this. In Part 3, the book discusses persons born male who desire to become women in the light of the preceding parts. Bailey calls these individuals transsexuals. He makes it clear that this is a broad church that is not limited to those persons who wish to undergo or have undergone genital reconstruction surgery. He discusses the popular brain sex idea, which posits that male to female, MTF, transsexuals are women trapped in men's bodies, and notes that there is no evidence to support this. In any case, he asks, how does anyone know what it feels like to be someone else? It's a ridiculous proposition. Bailey explains that there are actually 2 different types of male to feminine transsexual. This had been noted almost 100 years earlier by German psychologist Magnus Hirschfeld, and repeatedly confirmed by later scientists. None, however, had been able to explain this difference. Bailey then describes the research carried out by Dr Ray Blanchard, which explains these differences by showing that there are 2 distinct profiles of people born male who wish to become women. These profiles have nothing in common, save that the subjects are born male and wish to become women. The differences are enormous, and Blanchard's research for the first time explained these in proper scientific studies. This is the foundation of the modern science of transsexualism. This section of the book is illustrated by descriptions, again sensitively handled, of the lives of several transsexuals of both types. It's quite clear from the writing that these examples are meant to serve only as examples. The 2 types, Bailey explains, are homosexual transsexual, or HSTS, and autogynephilic transsexual, or AGP. Bailey explains that HSTS are uniquely attracted to masculine men, whereas AGPs, at least before transitioning, are attracted to women. The core motivation for HSTS is a powerful desire for straight masculine lovers. They may have numerous gay friends, but they are not attracted to them. This, Bailey explains, is a relatively easy orientation to understand. HSTS transsexuals are naturally feminine boys who desire men. If they think they can be successful as women, they're likely to at least try to follow this path. Everything they do from the point they decide to transition is in order to make themselves more attractive. This, after all, is exactly what most young women do, whether feminists like it or not. HSTS do not take hormones and have surgeries in order to become more like women, but to become more beautiful women. On the other hand, the core motivation for autogynephilic transsexualism is, quote, a man's propensity to be sexually aroused by the thought or image of himself as a woman, end quote. While it is complex, autogynephilia, like HSTS, is rooted in male sexuality. It could hardly be rooted in any other type, given that the subjects are male. Blanchard identified three distinct sexualities of autogynephilic men. These were heterosexual, the majority, who retained their normative male attraction to women and never or rarely had sex with men. Bisexuals began experimenting with sex with men after transition, or while dressed. Blanchard actually called these pseudo-bisexuals. And finally, analoerotics need no other person for romantic or sexual satisfaction. They just get off on what is going on in their heads. These last are sometimes called asexual, but this is wrong. They're not asexual, they just don't need another person to satisfy their sexual desire. To complicate matters even more, autogynephilia may manifest in four different manners. In transvestic AGP, the subject is stimulated by cross-dressing. In behavioural, the stimulus comes from doing womanly things, such as knitting. In physiological, the attraction is to female body functions like menstruation. AGP men may wear sanitary pads and urinate in them, for example. And in anatomic, the subject is aroused by the thought of having a woman's body parts, such as a vagina. These four manners may occur individually or in conjunction with each other, and they affect the three types of autogynephilic. The complexity of this condition and the incisiveness that Blanchard showed in identifying the cause of all of them, autogynephilia, are obvious. So, what causes autogynephilia? Put simply, this is an erotic target location error. Instead of the subject being romantically attached to a person outside of themselves, they are attracted to a pseudo-personality created within their own minds. This is a facsimile of a woman. She has to be a woman, since the men are gynephilic, or attracted to women. As the condition advances, this pseudo-personality is strengthened through sexual reward until it overwhelms the male host. At this point, the subject experiences feelings of great psychological unease as the created pseudo-woman, now in control, rejects her male body. This is so different from the gender dysphoria that HSTS experience that some HSTS actually reject the term. HSTS typically present while still young, often in their teens and rarely over the age of 30. While AGPs, on average, present much later, with a median age, at Blanchard's sample, of 43. This has allowed some AGPs to claim that the only difference is one of age at presentation, but Blanchard debunks this. At the same time, thanks to the internet and social media, there is sufficiently more overlap in age now than when Blanchard was researching. It is possible to compare the types side by side now. They're completely different. HSTS are extremely feminine and have no difficulty passing as women. They often themselves claim that they are useless at being men. AGPs, in the West at least, even when younger, find it difficult to be feminine at all, and those who transition later in life may really struggle. Bailey observes, there is the rare exception, but for the most part, autogynephilic transsexuals aspire, with some success, to be presentable, while homosexual transsexuals aspire, with equivalent success, to be objects of desire. Note, however, that HSTS are interested in attracting straight male lovers and are in direct competition with natal women for them, which stimulates them to appear more beautiful. AGPs in the main are not in that market. Bailey, as a clinician, is equally sympathetic to both types and makes it clear that both should be treated fairly. Having presented the case that male homosexuality may be genetic, Bailey then suggests that autogynephilia may also be, and may run in families. If that's true, it would therefore be a discrete, genetically dependent orientation in itself. That is something I am personally dubious about, but there you go. Gender dysphoria is a deeply felt discomfort with male physical attributes felt by male to feminine transsexuals of both types. Indeed, it is the clinical diagnosis upon which a referral for surgery must be based, and this has caused some considerable confusion. In talking to many HSTS trans women, both online and in person, it's quite clear that they do not suffer gender dysphoria in the way that AGPs do. For the latter, this is a deep and unsupportable loathing of their male organs. It is triggered by the collapse of their male persona under onslaught from their pseudo-feminine one. Most HSTS have no such issue with their organs. They have an issue with being beautiful. This is so that they may compete with natal women and be accepted as sexual partners by straight men, who are the only men they're interested in. If winning such a man means losing the penis, so be it. Bailey is pessimistic about the extent to which GRS, genital reconstruction surgery, improves a trans woman's chances of winning and keeping a straight male partner. I concur. Throughout, Bailey avoids inflammatory language, and while this is not a science textbook, writes in a very neutral manner. He presents the evidence and explains the scientific theories, but he leaves the reader to draw conclusions. The book is not perfect, and this in part is because it was published over a decade ago. Where it falls down most is where there was least scientific research. In addition, the author tends to extrapolate from the US experience to the global one, which is somewhat unsupported. He somewhat assumes that the US milieu can be regarded as a standard of normativity, when in fact many observers would regard it as a rather peculiar one, informed by some deeply unpleasant Anglo-Saxon prejudices. For example, the author clearly regards the idea that Danny should grow up to be a gay man rather than a transsexual woman as a good outcome. He acknowledges that this must mean Danny suppressing his femininity, and does remark that if he grew up in a milieu less prejudiced than the US, he would probably be transsexual. But he makes no attempt to argue that US culture should change, meaning that boys like Danny must continue to suppress their true natures, however hard that might be. Today, social change means that there would be a much greater chance that Danny would indeed grow up to be transsexual, even in the USA. Notwithstanding these points, which Bailey might well view differently today anyway, The Man Who Would Be Queen is overall an excellent book. It lays out the science of transsexualism in a clear and easily understood manner, and thus provides an accurate and factually correct layperson's guide. I would say this book is a very useful primer, and explains a great deal that would otherwise be mysterious. All in all, it is well written, contains much insight, and treats its subjects with great respect. It preserves their dignity, even when describing practices that most people would be surprised by. It's not at all prurient or lascivious, and maintains a consistent good humour throughout. So why on earth did it cause so much trouble? The Storm in a Latte Cup. While The Man Who Would Be Queen discussed several different types of sexuality, and the individuals who have them, only one of these groups showed any negative reaction to the book. Gay men and HSTS trans women were largely silent. I have explained Blanchard to many HSTS trans women. Many were suspicious at first, but very quickly recognized themselves in his descriptions. The only group that objected to the book at all was a small number of AGP activists, most of whom were themselves academics. This is surprising because academics, while frequently scathing about each other's conclusions, are usually very careful to avoid any kind of ad hominem attack. But the very opposite happened here. While some AGP activists did try to debunk Blanchard, whose research informed much of the book, they were unsuccessful. In any case, Blanchard did not write the book that caused the anger. J. Michael Bailey wrote it. He, rather than Blanchard, was the target of what his colleague Dr Alice Drager called a narcissistic rage attack, a classic case of shoot the messenger, a shocking attack. The attack on Bailey was shocking for its intensity and its personal nature. An investigation by Northwestern University, where Bailey is a professor, fully vindicated him, and an excellent rebuttal of the attacks was written by Drager. However, there is no doubt that a small group of people in positions of responsibility, including senior academics, colluded to attempt to ruin Bailey's career and destroy his private life. Thankfully they failed, but this reflects no credit on the perpetrators whatsoever. The attempt to discredit both Ray Blanchard and Michael Bailey was not on scientific grounds, but on personal ones. There is no credible evidence to refute Blanchard. Yet, to this day, many autogynephile activists, and even a few HSTS ones, who should know better, claim that his typology is, quote, out of date, or, quote, debunked. Nothing could be further from the truth. While some of the terminology has been modified in certain publications, the core ideas of Blanchard have become the de facto scientific consensus. These are that there are two distinct types of male-to-female transsexualism, both rooted in male sexuality. These are homosexual or non-homosexual. All non-homosexual transsexuals are motivated by autogynephilia. Individuals in the first group are strongly attracted to men, while the others are attracted to the idea of themselves as women. Blanchard's typology remains the basis of the APA's understanding of transsexualism, along with that of the WHO and other psychological and psychiatric bodies across the globe. MRI tests on separate and controlled groups of HSTS by Rametti et al. On one hand, and on AGPs by Savick and Arver on the other, results published in 2011, clearly demonstrated major differences between HSTS and AGP brains. This directly confirmed Blanchard. Today, the principal researcher into autogynephilia is Dr. Anne Lawrence, who is herself AGP. She has amassed many narratives from other autogynephiles that fully support Blanchard, which she also does. This, of course, has also made her a target for attack, despite the thorough and painstaking nature of her research. The attacks on Bailey were academically disgraceful. It's worse because senior academics prosecuted. They attempted to force the acceptance of an explanation that lacked any independent support. They rejected properly designed, supported, peer-reviewed scientific research, as Blanchard's was. When it became impossible to break the science, they used the tactics of politicians rather than scientists. They attempted to shout down a perfectly well-developed and executed piece of research, and to destroy the lives of those who proposed it. When all else failed, they resorted to simple defamation, character assassination, accusations of child abuse, personal insult and innuendo, and even death threats. Nobody could be in any doubt that this was an atrocious way to behave. Why did they do it? Because they had no evidence to refute Blanchard. It's no different from the preaching of extremist religious fundamentalists who deny evolution or how the universe came to be. It is the willfully ignorant point of view that because one believes something, it must be so, irrespective of whether or not it is true. Well, the Earth is not 6,000 years old, and Darwin was right. Science is the only credible means we have to explain natural phenomena. To deny it because it might harm the interests or hurt the feelings of some people is unacceptable. That such a position is held by some claiming to be scientists themselves is egregiously so. For those people to then collude in a pack attack on others whose ideas they disagreed with is beyond the pale. In the 13 years since this celebrated storm in the Latte Cup, further research has vindicated Blanchard. No serious scientist now subscribes to the brain-sect notion as regards autogynephilic transsexuals. The consensus is firmly that there are two distinct conditions that lead to male-to-female transsexualism, both rooted in male sexuality. The politically correct myth that transsexuals are, quote, women born in men's bodies, has been debunked, not once but time and again. This has not prevented autogynephile activists from continuing to promote it, to the detriment of HSTS transsexuals and, of course, women. So persuasive have they been that many laypersons apparently believe that the only way to be a real woman is to have been born with a penis. To this end, they continue to use the same tactics as they used against Bailey: misrepresentation, traduction, quote mining, bullying, character assassination, defamation, and flat lying. Blanchard himself no longer researches in the area of transsexualism. He was on the editorial board for the most recent revision of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, published by the APA. J. Michael Bailey has returned to an area of fascination. He recently collaborated in research which re-examined, using pairs of identical twins, the idea that homosexuality might be genetic and innate. His contributions to studies in the field of human sexuality remain important. Lawrence continues to publish and contribute to the actual science of transsexualism, rather than the socio-political nonsense that is all too prevalent. The Man Who Would Be Queen, in summation, then, is a well-written and enjoyable book that explains the science of transsexualism in everyday language, citing real examples of real people. It's a must-read for anyone interested in this subject. The book makes it possible to understand the phenomenon of people like Bruce, quotes Caitlyn Jenner. While not in itself a scientific textbook, it's an accurate and readable primer that points the reader in the direction of the peer-reviewed research on which it is based, with an excellent bibliography. It would be of special interest and help to those who have in their families autogynephilic transsexuals, particularly women whose husbands have announced the intent to transition, as well as the sons and daughters of such men. I think, and this is personal, that it would be a fine thing if people bought Dr. Michael Bailey's book. I can only admire a man who put up with the amount of abuse, the threats, the character assassination that he had to, and still is a decent, smiling, affable person who is more than happy to spend time talking about the problems that he had and had to bear himself. Buy the man's book. He's a good guy.